Okay, Chapter 15 is titled Wireless Metropolitan Area Network and Personal Area Networks. So these are kind of two extremes of, we've talked about local area networks, and so these are kind of two extremes from very short range to very wide range. So also covered in this chapter are the Bluetooth protocol and then also the Zigbee networks. So there have been various network standards that have been developed. So some of the acronyms on here are WPAN, a wireless personal area network. These are very short range networks, and Bluetooth is included in this. And then the wireless local area networks, which are used to cover homes, college campuses, businesses, and then above that, then you have the wireless metropolitan area networks, which are used to cover entire cities and provide internet services at that level. Going along with the size of coverage and the number of mobile stations that they support, are increased complexity, increased power consumption, but then also increased data rate comes along with these different standards that have developed. There have been a number of these that, at least for we'll talk about some smaller networks that are now by and large, well, they are obsolete. I think they were primarily developed in the 80s, but are considered obsolete now because of wireless routers and Wi-Fi in even home and campus networks now. But Hyperland, I think, was originally developed in Europe. It had an original version and then a second version. So again, this was a different networking protocol than Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is ubiquitous now. We all have Wi-Fi cards in our computers and in our cell phones. Of course, none of that would have worked with Hyperland, which required, a completely different type of modem and used different frequencies. There were two revisions of it. There was the Hyperland 1 and the Hyperland 2. Hyperland 2 is notable now because the 802 11A, the first version of Wi-Fi, used essentially the same physical layer as Hyperland 2. So this was kind of formed as a foundation for a predecessor, a direct predecessor of 802.11a, which was the first widespread Wi-Fi standard that we talked about previously. Again, some goals of Hyperland 2 or security, handoff, increased throughput, all the features that we want with a mobile network. It's connection oriented, meaning that a mobile station actually makes a connection to the network, and then that connection is maintained until the mobile station actually drops the connection or disconnects, as opposed to connectionless services. Never actually, they just transmit and receive, send packets to a destination without establishing a connection. It's kind of similar to the way UDP works. UDP is a connectionless protocol. So again, Hyperland 2 was intended similar to Wi-Fi with the use of access points. The access points provided a connection to various mobile systems, and then they were a bridge between the mobile systems and then the fixed internet. Okay, so again, some Hyperland 2 features: control is centralized at the access point. A little bit here on spacing between channels. The radio link protocol provided encryption, supported handoffs, and then also provided for connections, was a connection-oriented protocol. Again, that's been made obsolete by 802.11, the Wi-Fi protocol. Another obsolete protocol was home RF. Again, this has been by and large replaced by Wi-Fi connected devices in your home, and Wi-Fi routers or mesh networks, and then kind of moving into this space, a similar space at a higher level above Wi-Fi, are things like the Google Nest network, or Amazon has a similar network where you can buy all these devices, lights, switches, music players, all that connect to via Wi-Fi, and then are controlled through your higher level protocol. So I run Google Home in my home, and so can turn lights on and off over my cell phone, or just walk into a room and ask for music to play, and it comes on a smart speaker. But an early attempt at this was something called Home RF. It had originally a different acronym, SWAP. I forget what that stands for. Maybe on one of the slides here. But it was an early predecessor of the Wi-Fi connected home that we have now. And Home RF was intended for home use, whereas the Hyperland was intended for a larger space. This slide is several years old and says 43 million U.S. homes now contain more than one PC. I don't know what the number is now, but in addition to PCs now, the Wi-Fi, you've got all of your streaming video services, your Fire Sticks and Roku devices, as well as your smart speakers. You may have smart plugs and smart lamps, all kinds of different devices now that you can control over your Wi-Fi network, and so Wi-Fi also signaled the death of home RF. But it was an early attempt to provide central control to all of the devices that could be all of the smart devices that could be connected and controlled through your home RF network. They had to be home RF compatible. Again, this is all obsolete, and then now this has been largely replaced with either Wi-Fi connections to an access point, or the other common home networking technology that's in use now is Bluetooth, for particularly for headsets and connections to smartphones, or Bluetooth speakers. That's the other common popular home wireless networking technology. So some advantages of wireless home RF. Provided for mobility, you can move the devices around, simultaneous internet access from multiple devices, simple, inexpensive, and all of these are kind of standards that have been, are part of the modern Wi-Fi connected home. In home RF, all the devices could share the same connections for voice and data. Provides the foundation for a broad range of interoperable consumer devices. At my home, I actually run a voice over IP for my home phone line. The home phone number is actually a Google Voice number, but I have that and use that essentially as my landline, in addition to the cell phones. And the voice over IP service I use is free. So I'm going to skip the rest of that. Again, it's obsolete. At the metropolitan area level, intended to provide a service to like an entire city, was the Ricochet network. Again, these required special modems to connect your laptop via the Ricochet radio modem to the Ricochet network, and then ultimately a connection to the internet. But it was a mobile data access service that it's always on, provides high-speed, secure mobile access to the desktop from outside the office. It allows you to link to the internet or the corporate network over radio. Okay, so you didn't need phone lines. Again, it's obsolete now. It's no longer in service. It's been largely replaced by Wi-Fi hotspots, and then that's the latest trend to provide now Wi-Fi hotspots throughout a city to provide metropolitan service. The Ricochet network was a very low power network. It could be installed on street lights so that to get coverage throughout a city. Let's see. Here's some specifics. Operated in the 902 to 928 megahertz range. Used shoebox size radio receivers called microcell radios. Microcells are typically mounted to street poles, and then they did require a small amount of power that they actually got from street lights. And then the wireless modem was you'd have to get this in order to connect to the network. Weighed 13 ounces, has the general dimensions of a small paper bag, so you could plug it directly into your laptop or desktop. And again, largely completely made obsolete by modern Wi-Fi, which we have built into all of our cell phones and laptops now. But kind of provided access to the internet, so you send email. It was kind of slow by today's standards, but you could browse the internet, things like that. Okay, so here's a table providing some comparisons of, Wi-Fi, the current kind of standard that really has completely replaced these older networks, Home RF, Hyperland, and Ricochet. But I wanted to mention them briefly because I don't know, you're not going to run into these as current technologies, but you might find them mentioned at some point. And you should be aware, I guess, that they were intended as competing networks to Wi-Fi, but essentially lost that battle. I'm going to end this lecture here. I think that's about 20 slides. When we come back, we'll look at Bluetooth.